All right. Well, I want to welcome you to this week's, or maybe this month's, What Else Is New podcast. This is Tim Graves. I'm one of the co-founders of the Graves Golf Academy. My brother and I started this, probably, I always say it's probably about 25 years ago now. We had the idea, we were working with Natural Golf, and I was actually, my story goes, and it kind of leads into this podcast today, but my story goes that I was out playing for a living. I actually, prior to that, I graduated with a degree in epidemiology and biostatistics, and I went and worked for about 9 years for the state of Oklahoma, State Health Department. And I, during the time that I worked, I played competitive golf. I actually it leads into today's podcast, so I want to talk about this, but I actually was a very highly ranked amateur player at that time. I would work 7, 8, 10, 12 hours a day. As an epidemiologist, which is infectious disease control, some days you have off, some days you work 20-hour shifts. It depends what's going on. If you have an outbreak of something going on, you might work 3 days in a row for 20 hours a day, and then you're off for a week. But it was a job I had that I actually was interesting because I was able to play golf with this job, because typically when you have infectious diseases or you have things like that you're dealing with, you're extremely busy over the winter when people have close personal contact. So I'd work, hundreds of hours a week, literally over the winter. And then working for the great state of Oklahoma, they give you comp time. They wouldn't pay you overtime. So you'd have to have comp time, and you have to spend it within the year. So there was many times in the summer, I'd literally have hundreds of hours I'd have to spend of time that I'd have to take off. Literally, not that they had to force me a lot, but I'd have to take off and to make up for that. And so I'd obviously use it to play golf, or I'd go in golf tournaments. So it was really kind of the best of both worlds. But the interesting thing, though, was at that time, when I was playing, I was actually playing obviously year round, but I would actually practice very hard around my work. I'd practice in the morning. So before I went to work, I'd usually go for like an hour before I'd go to work. So I'd about 6:30 in the morning, I'd go to the golf course, and I'd typically chip and putt. Because I couldn't go there and get hot and sweaty, before I'd want to go to work. Because a lot of times I'd be in a shirt and a tie, and I'd tuck in the tie, and I'd go chip and putt about an hour. And then I'd work, from like 7 till about 11. And then and my boss, I had a great boss at the time. In fact, I can say his name. His name is Joe Maloney, and I just love Joe to death. But Joe knew we had a very stressful job. And Joe would say, I want you guys to take off for an hour or two at lunch and get away from work. Because, we're dealing with a lot of people that were sick, a lot of doctors who were kind of in crisis modes, and nurses that were in crisis modes because of outbreaks that were going on in the state. And so he'd say, if you can get away for an hour and a half at lunch, get away from work, go do something else, and then come back and we'll have a good afternoon. And a lot of those guys would go and they'd go run, or they'd go, and go work out, or they'd go do something at lunch. And obviously I'd go to the golf course and I'd go to the golf course and I'd do the same thing at lunch. I didn't want to get real hot and sweaty. And so I'd go chip and putt and pitch, work around a green at lunch and grab some quick lunch, come back to work, and then, work till like 4 or 5 in the afternoon. And then after that, after 4 or 5 in the afternoon, I'd typically go to the range or go to the field and hit balls, and then practice pretty hard at that time. And my wife used to always, she didn't laugh and giggle about it, but she used to give me a hard time about it, because for a lot of times, the only time she'd ever see me was sitting out there when I was hitting balls, or come to the golf course and meet me or whatever. And then I'd try to play golf, or try to play some rounds of golf on weekends, or at night, after work, try to play rounds of golf. But I did that, and I did that for years after college. I did that for about 8 or 9 years. And during that time, I actually became I was ranked top 25 amateur in the country. So it was pretty successful for me. And it was interesting because I got to a place that I was playing in U.S. amateurs, U.S. mid amateurs, U.S. pub links, USGA events. I was trying to qualify for U.S. Opens. In fact, I made the second stage a couple of times, missed it by a shot a couple of times, another couple long stories. But, and then obviously winning a lot of state amateurs, winning a lot of city amateurs, I was doing very well. Obviously I was the top ranked amateur in the state of Oklahoma and top rate in this part of the country. But it came down to the fact that I realized that if I wanted to take it to the next level and play more competitive, the guys that were beating me out there were the Tiger Woods of the worlds, the Tim Harrises of the worlds, the guys that were playing full time. The guys that the only thing that wasn't behind their name was professional golf. So when I played in my 3 U.S. amateurs in 94 or in 94, 95, 96, I played against Tiger, won them all. So, those were the years that, Tiger won every amateur event at the time. And I played against him every one. In fact, I had the opportunity to play practice on the Tiger one at Pumpkin Ridge and up in Portland, Oregon. It was a great time. But I mean, he was just an amateur golfer who was a great golfer at the time. But it was interesting because what I did at that time was I not only built my golf game, obviously, but I was able to figure out how to compete. I was figured out how to become competitive. And I became competitive with something else on the side, meaning I wasn't a professional golfer that was playing golf, unlimited amount of time, 12 hours a day, and practicing all day long. And I actually had a full-time job, but learned how to compete working that full-time job. And that's kind of what I want to talk about in this podcast today, because I think there's some things that I think a lot of people miss, or a lot of golfers miss, when they talk about when they want to become competitive or they want to compete. And I think that's a real area that I actually, first of all, I enjoy it. I enjoy it a lot. It's why I actually practice. I mean, I now obviously work for a living. I am half owner of the Graves Golf Academy. We're extremely busy. I think we have up to close to 40 people that work with us or for us now, and through contractors and subcontractors. We have facilities all over the country. And we stay very, very busy. I know I have an incredible staff, incredible crew, but I still like to compete. I still like to play. In fact, I played in an event yesterday. It was a 1-day event for our South Central section. Ended up finishing second. And the reason people always ask me, why do you still play? As much as I'm traveling, as much as I'm playing, as much as I'm as busy as I am, why do you still do this? And I said, it's because it's the only reason I'll really go out and practice. Because unless I can have something I'm practicing for or something I'm practicing towards, I don't really enjoy the practice that much. I know some people do. And all the power to them. But I'm one of those guys that unless I'm out there saying, hey, in a week or 2 or 3 or whatever it is, I have an important round or rounds coming up to me, I won't put in the extra time. I'd go out there and use it as a stress relief. Trust me, I would do that. Get in the golf course and have some fun as a stress relief. But I won't put in the extra time unless I have something coming up, which you can call it a test, or you could call it but that's kind of the way I look at it. It's fun. I enjoy that. I already have, typically for me, when I'm looking at my competitive rounds, as for most, section players or PGA players that work for a living, that don't just play for a living, most of the time they're very busy at the beginning of the year. So in the April, Mays, and Junes, when guys are getting into the game, they're getting back into the game. When the guys they're giving lessons to, their golf courses, that's when they become exceptionally. They're very, very busy. They're running their Monday tournaments. They're running, at their courses, and so there's not a lot of events they plan that time of year. The July, August, September, October, when it starts getting real hot out, when golf is going down in the backside for the year, is typically when the shop pros or the teaching pros have a little bit more time. I say a little more time. They have some time. And that's usually when they will plan the tournaments. So the sections will plan the tournaments. So I'm part of that. And so I tend to get busy with playing in tournaments in the July, August, September, October of the year, which is good because it fits the same thing for us. Our golf schools go crazy in February, March, and April. We have waiting lists. In fact, we already have people sign up for next year for them. We have waiting lists. But once July, August, September hit, we still have good attendance, but it's not near what it is in the spring. And the same thing with everything else. When you talk about club sales, when you talk about the people calling you for lessons, when you talk about the people that you're going to see, it's very busy early in the year, and then it slows down. So anyway, it gives you time to play. And, I enjoy the playing. I enjoy that part. In fact, yesterday I went out and played 18-hole round. I think there was 75 or 80 guys and gals actually in the field. And I ended up finishing second in my division, and it was great. But, the thing I'd like to talk about a little bit is, how do you prepare for that? How do you get ready to go play a round of golf or an important round? And it's something that I think a lot of amateurs and even some professionals miss, or they don't understand, because I think, and it's probably, honestly, we're probably as guilty as causing issues with that. I don't know what a good word for this is, but we're probably as guilty as anybody of causing you to maybe not get the most out of your tournament rounds, because, and I'll tell you what I mean by that. We obviously, in the majority of what we teach, we're teaching fundamentals. We teach whether it's fundamentals of the long game, fundamentals of the short game, fundamentals of the mid game, whatever you want to call it, the grip, the setup, the backswing. position 1, position 2, position 3. I mean, everybody out there, I assume that's listening to this podcast has heard these. Even in putting, we got to get the eyes over the ball. We got to make sure the putter face is staying square. We got to get shaft lean. When you're chip, okay, you guys know this. And I assume that most of you guys or gals, when you're out there, you guys are out there working on your fundamentals. You're thinking the better your fundamentals, the better player you'll be. So the better your fundamentals, and which is true, it's, you're only going to be as good as your weakest fundamental. And that's the way we look at that. Okay. But when you are about to play in an event, whether it's a 1-day, club championship or a father-son tournament or a mother-daughter tournament or a couples tournament, or maybe or whatever it is, maybe it's a member guest you have coming up at a course you play, with your buddy, maybe you have reciprocal where you play in his, he plays, whatever it is. I mean, we all have hopefully we have our stuff we play in to keep it a little bit competitive. When you're playing in that, when you're playing those events, it's not about the fundamentals. It is about how well you play the game. Okay. And it is the game. I mean, because when you go out there and play in that, you have to prepare yourself to be able to play in that tournament. And I'm going to give you an example of what I do and tell you what I do. Because, and I think it's, guys, and we practice and play with a lot of very good players. I mean, we've mentioned it before, from the Victor Hovlands of the world to the Matthew Wolfs of the world. And I can name some of the older guys. And honestly, I think the older guys are probably better at this, but you guys may know Scott Verplank, Bob Tway, Willie Wood, Brant Jobe, and these guys. These are a lot of guys we play with on a daily basis, or we practice with on a daily basis. And we get to watch what they do, and obviously people watch what we do, but I see how they prepare for the rounds they're about to play in, or the tournaments about to play in. And a couple things that is always make note of. And here's number one. Number one, you need to really schedule it out. You need to put on your schedule on your calendar, okay? And I usually like to do it for 3 to 6 months in advance. And what I mean by important rounds, every round can't be an important round. And that is a major problem that amateur golfers have. They think when they go out there and play in the Saturday round with their buddies, it's an important round. I mean, it's a do or die round. It is not, okay? Understand that 90% of the rounds plus that professionals or really good amateurs play in don't matter. They may go out and play for a few bucks. They may go out and play, just to put a little money on the game. They may play for a Nassau here or there. They may go play for, a skin here or there, whatever. But it doesn't matter. They're out there trying different shots. They're out there working on the game. They're out there. They may try to pull a shot off in that they would never do in a tournament when they're out there with their buddies. Okay. And that's good. See if you can do it. See if you can hit that shot. See if you can hit one over that tree. See if you can hit it around that corner. See if you can hit one that low, when you have that shot. Maybe it's a hero shot they'll try it. And they may lose a couple bucks doing it, but it's not that big a deal. See, typical amateurs, when they go out there, every round's so important because I got to keep my handicap. I got to turn in my score. I got to lower my handicap. No. You got to be able to get out there in rounds and enjoy the round, but be able to practice some shots when you're out there. That's number one, okay? So when you do this calendar, I want you to highlight some important tournaments or some important rounds for you, but don't realize that not every round is a do or die round, okay? You need to be able to get on that golf course when you can just go out there and practice on the course. You can have fun on the course, and maybe by yourself. It may be with a buddy or two. It may even be on a weekend, but it's not that important of a round, okay? Because you're going to learn a lot from it. I will tell you right now, when I watch Scott Verplank and I watch Willie Wood and myself, including this, and Brant Jobe, a majority of the rounds we play are by ourselves. We'll go out on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesdays, and we may go out at 4 in the afternoon. We try to find a time that's quiet, maybe really hot out, whatever it is. We get in the golf course, we try to go play by ourselves, or we may play with one other person. I might go out there with Willie or whatever, and we're just out there hitting shots. If we hit a bad shot off a tee, we may drop 2 or 3 more, hit off it. We may see a pin on a green that's tucked way to the left side of the green, and we'd never attack at that pin, but we'll hit 3 or 4 shots at it today, just trying the shot. You get to practice on the golf course, and we'll get more to that in a minute. But like I said, the first thing I want you to do is I want you to mark on the calendar those important rounds, okay? And then realize that the other ones aren't that important. It might be a match play tournament you have coming up. It might be a men's group tournament you have coming up. Whatever it is, okay? Now, prior to those important rounds or those tournaments, okay, you need to set a schedule for yourself. Now, I do it a week in advance, okay? So let's say this, like yesterday I had an event. It was on a Monday. And it was a big event for me, and it was an important event for me. It was an event that was against about 100 other players, and it was a section event. So for 1 week prior to that event, I basically threw fundamentals out the wall. And I'm going to tell you what I mean by that. It's not that I didn't worry about fundamentals. It's not that I didn't want to have good fundamentals, but I didn't work on my fundamentals within reason. So for this month, the Monday, which yesterday, and 1 week prior to that, and I literally started on the day. So the Tuesday prior to that, okay, I realized all I'm going to do now for this next week is, number one, is I'm going to hammer on my short game. Because if you want to play in a good tournament or you want to play good rounds, you got to have a great short game. We'll get back to that here in a second, okay? So I spent even more or extra time on the short game. We're talking putting, chipping, and pitching, and in that order. Number one, extra time on putting. Number two, a little extra time on chipping, and then obviously pitching, okay? So I'm always, the week before, I'm always putting extra time on that. And I'll be honest with you guys, I also, every single day, like to play games when I do that work on that short game. Meaning I may do the 2-ball game. I may do the pullback game. I might do clock or whatever it is. You guys, hopefully you guys have seen my master classes or you guys have looked at our workshops and this type of information, but I like to play games in those short games. So I'm not out there just putting under a string in a mirror. That's fundamental work. I'm out there playing games, trying to put a little pressure on my short game that week before. So I might play, 2-ball pullbacks and try to get 10 holes, 12 holes, 18 holes, try to see how many I can do in a row, or play the 2-ball chipping game and try to get 10 points, 12 points, 15 points, whatever it is. I'm playing every day. I'm trying to improve a little bit better every day, but putting a little stress on the short game in practice. So I'm not working on fundamentals. I'm trying to score in the short game. Okay. So that's the first one thing is to do. The second thing I'm doing that week before is I'm trying to get in the golf course as much as possible. Now, it may not be, and most of the times it's not. It may not be going and playing 18 holes of golf. It's not. It might be going and playing 5, 6 holes of golf. It might be playing 9 holes of golf. In fact, there's been times I've gone out to my course and I've actually played the same hole 3 or 4 times in a row. Like we have out at Oak Tree National, number 15 and 16 run next to each other. And I'll go play and I'll get out there and there may be somebody going on 17, 18. There may be somebody back there on the back 9. I might go play 15 and 16 2 or 3 times in a row just to play golf. It's nothing to do with keeping score. It's just out there teeing up the ball, looking at the shot, hitting the shot, getting up over it. So what I'm doing is I'm trying to get in a good playing rhythm. Okay. So every time I'm working on I'm getting over a pre-shot routine, I'm sitting up over it, I'm thinking of the shot. And there's even times, and I've done this many times, I may play a hole or two and I may hit a great drive off the tee. And all of a sudden I realize, okay, if I'm in a tournament, I have this shot, this would be an easy shot. So I'll take it, I'll throw it in the rough and I'll say, okay, that's a pretty deep little spot in that rough. How would I play this shot out of the rough? Okay. And say, so now all of a sudden I got a shot in a little bit of deep rough trying to hit into this green, just getting ready for that tournament coming up, just getting ready for that Warden coming up in a few days. So I'm trying to get into a playing rhythm. And that's a huge deal because too many people, and I watch this all the time, especially in pro-ams I play in, they'll get out there and it takes them 3, 4, 5 holes, if they're lucky, to get in that playing rhythm. Well, guess what? Game over. I mean, they may have bogey, double bogey, whatever, the first few holes and game's already over for the tournament, okay? They're not in their playing rhythm. And trust me, getting out and warming up before the tournament round that morning, it helps and you want to warm up, but that's not going to get you in that playing rhythm. Doing it the few days before gets you in that playing rhythm. So you're working on the pre-shot routine. You're working on your short game. You're working on different shots in the golf course, okay? Now, the things you can do, during that week is you can work on what I call it BAT, B-A-T. And you guys have heard me say this before, I'm sure, but it's ball position, tempo, and alignment, okay? And so those are the things that can go out overnight, or ball position, tempo, and alignment. Ball position, tempo, and alignment are things that you can constantly check when you're practicing. And you can do that by throwing an alignment aid down, like the alignment ball position trainer, and maybe throw something, perpendicular to that. So you're checking your ball position, tempo, and alignment. You're just checking it. You're really, and I don't want to say the word fixing it. You're just confirming that it's good. Okay. Because the reason why is those are the 3 things that will tend to fall apart when you play a round of golf and you start getting nervous. Let's talk about the tempo first. When we get nervous, and guys, it could be nervous because you're playing in a round of golf in your club championship or your men's group or your ladies group, and you all of a sudden you realize, wow, I might have a chance to play really well today, or I might have a chance to possibly finish high in this tournament. And all of a sudden you get nervous. You start getting nervous, we get quick. Very, very, very few people get slow when they get nervous. In fact, I don't know any of them. They get quick. Well, when you get quick, your tempo speeds up. When your tempo speeds up, we stop moving the hips like we should. We don't hip move as much as we should. We start thinking poorly. Things occur. So we need to work on slowing down. What I mean by slowing down, keeping a slower rhythm when you get nervous. When you walk up to that golf ball on the green, slow it down a little bit. When you're walking back to the cart, I'm not talking about going in reverse. I'm talking just don't rush it. Make sure you do a pre-shot routine every time. Make sure you line up the ball every time. Make sure you get up over the putt. Make sure you go through the same systems or the same routines every time. Okay. When we talk about our red zone, green zone, gray zones, which is, the red zones is the pre-shot routine prior to the shot. The green zones when you get over top of the ball. Okay. The gray zones, what you think about after the shot. We talk about that a lot in our AAI schools, our alert attitude of indifference in schools, but our mental game schools. But make sure that you're staying in those zones. You do your appropriate red zone work. You do your green zone work. You do your gray zone work. So you're working on tempo. And I'll tell you what, thinking about tempo when you're on the golf course is fine. But when you think about it, okay, most of the time I get nervous. I need to slow down. And I can give you some pretty good examples of that, and I will here in a second, but think about tempo. The other two are ball position and alignment, because things can change overnight. Those are the things that can change overnight. We can start getting ball position too far back, too far forward, or we can start getting poor alignment. So if you're throwing a check system down for that, there's no problem with that at all. In fact, there's many, many times I watch my brother do this all the time. We'll get out in practice rounds. So we'll get out the week before, we're playing in events, whatever it is. And he'll get in the golf course and he'll have the ABT with him, and he'll hit a shot in a tee box and he'll throw the ABT down his feet and say, wow. Because he'll miss a shot off a tee box and he'll throw the ABT down and go, man, I got to make sure I'm lined up right. Because guys, tee boxes can line you up funny. I mean, we all know that. They can line you up right. They can line you up left. And you get up and you start trusting the tee box, not trusting yourself. And all of a sudden we'd line up towards the trees. We throw an ABT down out there while you're practicing. Why not? See, a lot of amateur golfers would freak out over this. They sit there and say, I can't keep a handicap if I throw my ABT down. That's illegal. No, we're talking about just getting on the golf course and getting your rhythm, getting your practice, getting in that good golf rhythm. And I'll tell you right now, you go play a practice round on a course and you get out there and you hit a shot and you're in the practice round and you hit a shot off a tee and it's like it went into the trees or maybe you pulled or whatever it was. You're like, whoa, what happened there? It doesn't hurt to throw something down your feet and say, was I lined up correctly? Maybe go hit another shot and say, make sure I'm lined up right. Because you may be lining up against that tee box. It may line you up to the right and you got to line up to the left for the hole, whatever it is. That's huge. Okay. That's huge. That's why so many people play their courses better than they do other courses, because they get comfortable with that. But there's nothing wrong with doing that in another course in a practice round. But always remember, I call it the BAT, ball position, alignment, and tempo. That week before or the few days before when you're getting ready for the events, those are the things that you can check and make sure you're doing good. It's not time to fix your grip. It's not time to fix position one. It's not time to, try to change. No, it's too late. If you're trying to create new fundamentals or help or work on your fundamentals in that week before, it's going to become uncomfortable stage. You're going to be uncomfortable on that golf course and it's not going to work. You've got to get out there and trust what you have. And honestly, this is the truth. Let's say you're hitting a big old slice and it's the week before a tournament. You're not going to fix that slice going to that tournament. You're going to have to go play that slice. Okay. If you think you're going to get out there, because here's what's going to happen. You might get a Band-Aid that fixes it for a couple holes and all of a sudden you get nervous and it's going to come pouring back and it's going to come pouring back at the worst times. So you got to play with what you got. Okay. So that week you got before, you're figuring out what you got to go play with. That's what it's all about. How good is my short game? I want to make sure it's primed. Okay. How am I hitting the shots out there? What's the ball flight I'm doing out there? Am I hitting it high? Am I hitting it low? What have I got going? Because you got to take that in. That's what you're going to play with. You're a low ball hitter and you go on a golf course and you say, okay, tell me hit it high. It's probably not going to happen. I mean, it's going to make you uncomfortable. You've got to play with what you got. Okay. And then, and it's not what this podcast is about, but the weeks after is when you work on your game. So that's why we take our stats. We sit there and we play the round of golf and say, okay, how many putts do we have? How many chips do we have? What was our percent up and down? Well, how many fairways do you have? We look at that and say, okay, now I want to have an important round for a couple of weeks. Now I got some time to work on those fundamentals again. I got time to go do that work. But so the week before, your hammer or the days before. I mean, I don't know how much time you're going to punch. I do a week. I know some good players do 4 or 5 days before, but it's really how much time you have. You're trying to get in playing rhythm. Okay. So you're out there, and even if you play just a few holes, you're playing just every couple of days, get in playing rhythm. You're hammering on your short game. Okay. And you're making sure you're staying loose. And when you're staying loose, whether it's on the range, you're making sure your ball position alignment, your tempo are good. And there's many times, and I give the story, but I'll give it to you now, but some of you guys may have heard the story. I played in an event. It was a city amateur, and I think it was in 1993, I believe. So it's been a while back now. I was playing the city amateur, and I had won the city amateur 3 years in a row. Nobody had ever won it 4 years in a row. So it was a big deal to try to win it 4 years in a row. And it is a big event. In fact, There's been a lot of professionals that are on tour now that play in the City Amateur, Oklahoma City Amateur. It's a big event. And the way the City Amateur is played is we play at 4 different courses. We play in the 4 city courses. We play and it's actually the best of those city courses. So we play Saturday, Sunday, 2 city courses, and then we take off a week, and then you play the next Saturday, Sunday. So for the working man, they can play in this event. And there's hundreds of people that play in this. And I'd won it 3 years in a row, so I guess they could say I was a favorite to win it, whatever. And it was a lot of pressure. I really wanted to set a record for winning this 4 years in a row. Nobody ever done that. Well, I played in the first Saturday, Sunday event, and I think I shot 72, 71 or 72, 73. I remember I was 1 over par. And I think I was like 6 or 7 back. I didn't play that well. And so now we had the week long. We had a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday going into the next weekend. So as a typical amateur, you'd think I'd go to the range and I was going to go pound balls and I was going to go work on my fundamentals and try to, figure out the secret or figure out, what was going on with my game. And there's a problem. I was going to Atlanta, Georgia. I was an infectious disease control specialist for the state of Oklahoma. And that Monday through Friday, in fact, that Sunday night, I got in a plane. I flew to Atlanta, Georgia, and I went to the CDC, the Centers for Disease Control. And I had a week-long training to do some new testing that was going on. It was actually some HIV testing. There was some new testing that was going on. They were teaching us and training us on. So it was some pretty intense stuff going on. And I had to do that Monday through Friday. I wasn't getting back till Friday night, which I was in tee up the next Saturday. So it could not have been the worst of all. It was just crazy bad what this was going to be for this week. And I freaked out because I remember thinking, I got to practice. And honestly, if I was probably at home, I probably would have called in sick a couple of days. I probably would have left at noon a couple of days just to get more practice in, but I couldn't. So I'm in Atlanta and I took my clubs with me. And I remember that I vividly remember like this was yesterday. And I remembered before I went there, I set my plan. Okay. Every day I got out at 4 o'clock and I remember it was going to get dark like 7:30 or 8. I rented a car and I was going to jump in that rent-a-car and I was going to run out to the golf course. And I planned what golf course I was going to go to. And I was going to get 3 or 4 hours of practicing every night. And then I'd come back to the hotel, and I'd eat some late dinner and get up and do my training the next day. And I was like, okay, I can deal with this. I remember the first day on a Monday, and the people in Atlanta will know this, or people in Georgia will know this. I looked and mapped out. And I remember that the golf course was at like mile marker, like 160. And I was coming from the CDC in Atlanta. And it was like, I was going to get in the highway at mile marker, like 42. So I remember it was like 18 miles out there. And I could get there, even with Atlanta traffic, I could at least get out there in like 45 minutes an hour. Well, Georgia people, let me give you a little secret. In Oklahoma, our mile markers are by the miles. So like 140 to 141 is 1 mile. 141 to 142 is 1 mile. In Georgia, it's not. In Georgia, it's by exits. Okay. And I had no idea. So when I went to mile marker 160, it was 18 exits up the road, which was like 2.5 hours. Okay. And I am freaking the frick out to get up there. In fact, by the time I got to the golf course, it was dark. It was a joke. Okay. And so I didn't plan very well on my Monday night. Okay. So I remember literally getting the golf course with like 10 minutes to spare. I putted like 10 putts. It was like game over, dark, 30 out, get in my car. I got home at like 9:30 at night, ate a pizza. I remember this. I ate some pizza and went to bed. So I had the worst Monday practice ever because I didn't know the mile markers in Georgia. Okay. I didn't plan it well. So Tuesday's rolling around. So Monday night at midnight, I'm going, oh my God, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? I mean, I'm panicking. I got to get some practice in. I've got to play good in this tournament. Well, I found a driving range that was just down the road from the CDC. The CDC is not in the best, it's okay. But it's not in the best part of Atlanta. And this driving range was not a good part of Atlanta. But it was something I could get to in traffic and get there in about a half hour and get some practice in. So Tuesday at 4 o'clock, at the training ends, by 4:15, I'm in my car. I remember, like I said, like it was yesterday. And by 5 o'clock, I'm at this driving range. Well, here's the problem. The driving range had about 30 stalls. It was off of mats. They had the worst golf balls in the history, and it had a putting green with almost no grass. But that's all I had. That's all I had. And I also remember that for like 20 balls, it was like $20. It was just a joke how expensive it was. And so it was like, wow. But it's all I had. It's the only thing I could do to practice. So here's what I did for the week. So here's what I did. I literally sat there and created a on-course prep on the driving range. I knew the 2 courses I was going to play as well as anybody. I mean, I played these courses hundreds of times. They're city courses. I was a city player. I mean, I was a muni player. I played these courses 100 times, probably 1,000 times. So I knew them like the back of my hand. So here's what I'd do. I bought 2 buckets of balls. I remember there's like 60 balls in there in 2 buckets. Paid a fortune for them. And I'd go out there and I'd go to the very end stall. And I was off of mats. I remember this. But I'd try to get away from everybody. And I'd play the golf course. I'd tee up a ball. I'd go through my at that time, I didn't know green zone, red zone, grays. I had no idea about that stuff. I mean, I knew what to do, but I didn't have any names to it. But I'd literally go out there and say, okay, here's a number one at early one golf course is a par 4 downhill, slightly dog leg left. You got to hit the drive to the right. You need your driver about 280 to get a good spot. And so I'd get up over it. I'd visualize it in my head. I'd tee it up and I'd hit it. And I'd go, okay. And I'd say, okay, I pulled that a little bit. So I probably have, 160 left into the green, and I'd even envision where I think the pin might be. So I'm visualizing this. So I'd sit there, okay, it's a little bit uphill, a little, and honestly, I even thought how the wind would be. I remember looking at the weather forecast for the wind thinking, I knew how the wind would be on the golf course saying, okay, I got 160 into this green, pin's me back left a little bit, so uphill. So I need to hit a 7-iron here. So I'd pull it a 7-iron to hit it. I'd get up over it and I'd say, okay. And I'd walk through shots. Now, I admit I did not chip and putt on the driving range, but I walked through these golf courses and hit shot after shot after shot and played these golf courses again and again and again in my head, one shot at a time, one shot. And if I missed a shot, I did not say, look, I'm going to hit it. Nope. How I got to play that. I remember one time I almost topped a drive and I was like, okay, I'd have a 3-wood into this hole. I sure hope I don't have when I'm playing a tournament, but I do today. So I'd ripped a 3-wood off the mat. And I literally played these courses over and over again with these balls. It'd take me like an hour and a half, 2 hours. I mean, it took me, and I played them again and again through pre-shot. And I remember this vividly because I remember people waiting for the spots. And I remember going and wanting to be in the very end because I literally would hit 60 balls in like 2 hours. Most people would hit that in like 10 minutes or 20 minutes. But I literally went shot after shot after shot. And then I went over in the green and I worked on my chipping and putting. And I remember that it was terrible. But I also remember thinking to myself, if I can chip and putt good on this green, I can chip and putt good anywhere. I remember doing that. So I worked on 5-footers, I worked on 8-footers, I worked on 10-footers. And I worked on a chip and I did that again and again. And that's what I did. I remember doing on Tuesday. And then on Wednesday, I remember thinking to myself, I was like, okay, that's all I had. I'm going to do the exact same thing. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over here and I'm going to do 30 balls and play the 2 courses. And then I'm going to come back over here or whatever it was, numbers. And then I'm going to come over here, chip and putt. Then I'm going to go back and do it again. So I played the courses, through the pre-shot routine, went chipped and putt, came back and had that rhythm. And that's what I did Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. I literally tried the best I could creating rhythm on the range. Now, I could not get in the golf course, and there's no golf course to get onto. I just did rhythm on the range. It's all I could do. It's all you had. And I chipped and putted and chipped and putted and chipped and putted. I also remember going to my hotel room and setting up a putting thing. I took the yardstick, and at that time, now obviously we have the Excalibur. I would have killed for that at the time. But I remember putting in my room with, down the yardstick and so on, and, working on my putting in the room, just trying to get a rhythm, trying to go through that. It wasn't working fundamentals, just putting at night. But I did that. And I remember Friday and the plane flight on the way home. First of all, I remember I was a very nervous plane flight because I remember thinking that because I left at like 5 o'clock Atlanta time, and if I missed my flight or didn't get home, I was going to miss my thing for the next day, and I was out anyway. But I remember thinking, because at that time, that was very foreign to me. And I remember thinking, I got no chance. I especially remember this. I remember thinking I had no chance. Or thinking, and honestly, that thought may have helped me. Because I remember getting on the tee for the first round, and the last 2 rounds were at Early One Golf Course, and then the last one was at my home course, the Hefner Golf Course. But I remember that getting in that round at Early One in the first tee going, man, in my thought process was this is probably the worst preparation I've ever had in forever. And because I would have pounded balls that week before, and thinking maybe I just gave it up. Maybe it wasn't meant to be. I'm not going to win it 4 years in a row. I went and played Early Wine. Now remember, I'd played this course in my mind for the entire 4 days before, probably 20 times. I mean, a ton. Okay. So I don't know if I was less nervous or more comfortable because of that, or because my brain was saying, you got no chance anyway. I don't know what it was, but I remember being in that tee and I just felt comfortable. I wasn't that nervous. And long story made short, I went out and shot 63 that day. Par was 72. I shot 9 under and obviously played extremely well. She actually set a competitive course record. And then the next day I got in the tournament. Now I was so far behind at the time that I was now tied for the lead or one back. Or one ahead. I remember I was in the leader group going to the last day, but I was either tied for the lead or right around tied for the lead because that's how far back I was after the first weekend. And I went out the second day, and I remember there was at my home course, there was more nerves because, guys, you want nerves, and if you haven't played events, you'll know this. Play at your home course for something you're trying to play for that's important. There's always more nerves at your home course, always, because there's more expectations. It's the expectations you put on yourself. But I remember being on my home course. I grew up at this course. I'd been there since I was 12 or 13 years old. I'd been there forever. And I'd won the City Am again a bunch prior to this. And I teed it up, and I played against one of the top City players who'd also won the tournament many, many times. And I remember coming down going and playing the front nine to play the front nine 4 under. And then I got in the back nine, and I was now leading by 5 or 6. And the newspaper came out, started following us. And Mac Bentley, who's a buddy of mine, came out to follow me in the paper. And he followed me around the back nine. And I got over the 18th hole, which is a little par 5, a little shorter par 5. And I was leading, I think, by 8 or 9 by the time I got to number 18. And I got over top of a shot. And I literally went through the red zone, green zone, gray zone, what you call it now at that time, grinded over the shot, hit the par 5 and 2, tried to make the putt friggle, made up making birdie. And Mac, after he started interviewing about the round, I ended up winning the tournament by 9 shots. And Mac, at the end of the round, said, I can't believe he was interviewing about the round, and he was just really impressed because I'd shot 63, 64, I believe, the last 2 rounds. And after shooting 72, 73, whatever it was, the first 2 rounds. And he asked me, he goes, I can't not believe how hard you were grinding over that shot. He goes, you were winning by X amount. You had won the tournament by a ton already, and you were just grinding over that shot. He goes, was it the zone you're in? And I remember looking at him, and it's probably a pretty cocky thing to say, but I looked at him and said, no, I wanted to win by 10. And I'll never forget saying that. And then I'm thinking, okay, that's probably an immature thing to say, but I remember saying that, and it was actually written up in the paper, and I remember him laughing at me, but the moral of the story, the gist of the story was the fact that the practice I put myself in the week before, and I'll be honest with you, was probably a lot accidental. I mean, was a created practice, but it did exactly what I'm talking about. And what I want to bring up in this podcast is prior to an important event or important rounds, you've got to put yourself in golf rhythm. Golf rhythm is not going out and working hard on fundamentals. That puts you in comfortable state. There is time and places for that. And we stress there's times and places for that. But if you go out the week before and you're hammering on fundamentals, the body becomes uncomfortable. The brain becomes uncomfortable. The mind becomes uncomfortable. It's very hard to go on the golf course and play good golf when you're uncomfortable. In fact, it's impossible. You can be uncomfortable because of nerves. You can be uncomfortable because of tension. You can be uncomfortable because of, the people that's around you and you're playing with. That's fine. We can get through that. But you're putting your own uncomfortable self on because of fundamentals you're working on, or you don't trust your fundamentals. That's a problem. You've got to go out there with trust. Okay. And that trust is built up by, for me, also the week before, just pounding on that short game. Because remember, the best golf is played from the hole backwards. And it's very critical. It's very important to understand this, that if you trust your short game and you really believe I have a good short game, you can sit there, you can miss shots, you can miss tee balls, you can miss second shots, you can miss shots, and you can still play good golf or play good holes because the short game will save you. I've never seen the long game save anybody. The long game is a mechanical part of the game. That's very important. Obviously, it is a very important part of the game. The short game saves you. The short game. So, and I always tell people this. I have never, ever, ever, and I can honestly say this, stood in the first tee saying I have the best long game out today. I'm the best ball striker out here today. I've got the best driver out here today. I used to hit it really long. I don't hit it as long anymore. I still consider myself pretty accurate, but I've never sat in the tee. But I have, and I still do to this day. I walk on that first tee thinking I got the best short game out here. I don't sit there and say it, as a cocky, I'm going to beat you on short game, but I trust my short game enough. And honestly, every time I walk in a golf course, I'm like yesterday, there's a field of 100 people out there, whatever it was. I know those that will potentially beat me have a short game equivalent to me or close to me. The guys that don't, I watch them. They fall apart. They go out there and they bust apart. They literally get out there and all of a sudden, they may be playing good for the first few holes or maybe somewhere in the round because they're hitting it well. And all of a sudden, everybody misses shots during the round. Everybody misses shots during the round, and they have nothing to back themselves up. So that was kind of the moral of this podcast. And I'll probably end it here, or get close to ending it. But I got tons of stories. You guys know that, and there'll be more stories in the future in podcasts. But the story is the big thing is that when you're going to play those important rounds, or in a tournament. And I say important rounds because it may be a tournament for you. It might be something maybe you're going to a family, maybe you're going to a reunion with your buddies, a 25-year class reunion. You want to play some golf with them and you got it scheduled for, a month from now on a Saturday and you want to play good golf. That's an important round. Put it on your schedule. Put that thing in, highlight it in your schedule, set it up. And at least a few days before, I know we all have different time frames. I like to do it a week before. I know a lot of my friends who play competitively like to do it a week before. But at least a few days before, you've got to let the fundamentals go. You've got to trust what you've got. You got to trust what you have, even if it's not great. And guys, for most people, it's not. Okay. Trust what you have, play with what you have, get yourself in a playing mode, get yourself in that playing rhythm and hammer on that short game. That helps you get in that playing rhythm because it's kind of like I always say, the two birds with one stone. When you hammer on that short game, not only does it help you trust more, it's that basically that security blanket for you when you're not hitting it great. Because let me give you a little secret. Nobody plays a round of golf and hits it great every shot. Even Mo didn't. Yes, Mo was way above the average. Mo was much, much better than the average Joe out there. In fact, obviously he's one of the greatest ball strikers of all time. We consider the greatest ball striker of all time, but he's human. Humans miss shots, okay? So no matter, even if you consider the greatest ball striker of all time or just the average Joe out there, that short game will save you. And we all have good and bad holes out there, okay? We do. We just do. And, I can give you 1,000 stories of that, and I will in the future. But so get in that playing rhythm the week before and think about BAT, B-A-T, ball position, tempo, and alignment. When you're in that round, when you're playing that, the things that break down are your ball position, your tempo, and your alignment. And if you're checking those continually, and I'm not saying fixing them, just checking those continually, you'll be good. You'll be good when you're out there playing, okay? So that week before, check on the BAT, the BAT, get in a good playing rhythm, hammer on that short game. In that short game, play those games. We can talk more about that in the future, but I like to do little competitive short games because it puts a little of that pressure on there. So not only am I getting that playing rhythm, I'm getting a little pressure rhythm going, or a little pressure for that week before. That helps a lot too. So guys, anyway, I want to throw that out to you. I mean, I'll probably talk a little bit more about it today just because I played an event yesterday, and so it's fresh in my mind. But I hope you enjoy these podcasts. I hope you enjoy these ones Todd and I are doing, and I'll have another ones come up here real shortly. And guys, I have tons and tons of stories for you. I've been playing golf for going on 55 years now, and played thousands and thousands of competitive rounds, and been teaching for close to 25 years now. So hopefully I can give you guys some good tidbits to help you guys out. But guys, thanks for joining us in this podcast, and guys, we'll talk to you real soon.